I'm Andy Katz, along with my co-host Seth Greenberg on the latest edition of Courtside with Katz and Coach G. We're going to break down the top 16 with NCAA Tournament Selection Committee Chair Mark Hollis, and also be joined by South Carolina head coach Frank Martin.
Today on the podcast, we start off with the headliner, and I'll tell you just a little behind the scenes. We were like, man, this Bob Myers interview is amazing. Everybody's going to reuse it. No, they're not, because Draymond Green's going to insinuate that James Dolan's a slave owner. So, guess what happened? We talked about that for the most part of today. Jemele Hill was great to come on with us, and also Mitch Trubisky, the myth about the way he is being talked about, and life advice with our man Peter Rosenberg ahead of his All-Star Celebrity Game appearance.
This is the Russillo and Kanell podcast.
Russillo and Kanell, it's ESPN Radio. Kanell, for those listening on ESPN Radio, we'll have to do a picture of his handlebars that he has today. So he's gone from the beards to the handlebar. I imagine with a formal affair this weekend that you will be
Yes.
You'll be back to clean-shaven Danny on Monday.
Yeah, I have a black tie gala tomorrow night, so I don't know how they'd feel if I showed up with this look going on.
Look
and
good.
I don't know if my wife would show up with me with this look going on.
Well, she can say he doesn't look good. She just might be worried that she's
I
going to
think
lose you.
That's probably the real concern that she has, too.
Real estate lady.
Because you know who
there.
loved it? Brady. My 4-year-old thought it was awesome.
Tom?
No. My girl.
Your daughter. Well,
Yes,
Tom
my daughter,
liked it.
Brady. Yeah,
Tom
she
liked
loved
it, too. I wouldn't find it surprising.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the mock drafts that are out because Mel's got a new one. And not just, hey, this guy's 12th and this guy's 15th, but a bigger question about mock drafts. We also are going to have Jemele Hill on, which is where we're going to start. And this is the Draymond Green podcast, Dre Day. And you've probably heard this now, this audio. I talked about it this morning on Mike and Mike and on SportsCenter, and it was one of those things. We had Bob Myers. We thought that interview was great. We're like, yeah, people probably pick up on that. That storyline of him talking about how Durant and him talked when Durant decided to go there, getting over the 3-1 loss, didn't happen.
Right.
Okay, because race was brought up, the Oakley story was brought up, and Draymond Green, looking at the Charles Oakley, James Dolan story of last week, had this to say about it.
And that's a slave mentality. You're doing it for me, it's all good. But now you're doing it against me, or not necessarily against me, but you're speaking out against my organization. It's not good anymore. That's a slave mentality, slave master mentality. That's ridiculous. It was all fine and dandy when he was laying people out, taking fines.
Out Jordan, right?
You know,
Yeah.
taking fines and all this stuff for your organization. But now all of a sudden when he says something that he feels, it's a problem. I disagree with that. I definitely think, like I said, that's a slave master mentality.
You want me to go first on this one?
Yes.
Okay, I disagree with Draymond here, and I like Draymond a lot. I like him when he's on the air. I like when I've run into him in person. I really do like him. I just think he's incredibly wrong here, and that might be me not understanding it, and that's okay, but I'd suggest a couple things. One, on the reference of what Oakley had done for the franchise, and then this is how he's treated. Well, that's what the salary was for. Mm-hmm. The salary was there to compensate you for the blood, sweat, and tears as a player. I'd like to ask the question, is there any possible way we can have a disagreement between a white guy and a black guy where it has nothing to do with race? Because I think if you look at the optics of it, where it's a bunch of white men being told by the man in power, another white man in Dolan, to go after the black guy, the optics of it, and then with Oakley on the ground surrounded by all these white men, like that's a tough image for a lot of people to get past. And I understand just looking at that picture, Danny, like it's tough to argue how bad that looks. But this is the beauty of the story, is that we actually have more information. We have more context. We know that no one likes Dolan. We know that Oakley doesn't like Dolan. And we know that Dolan is an owner. He is an owner of a franchise, not an owner of a person, not an owner of the player. He is an owner of the franchise. So even if we don't like him and think he's completely out of control and wrong and misguided, he still gets to do that because he owns the Knicks. So he can be wrong. None of us can like him, but he can also just be doing something to Oakley that's wrong is just because he doesn't like the guy. Am I so naive to think we could still maybe have things in present day that are just about one guy not liking someone else and not making it about a historical event, an act, a horrible act that we seem to have it being referenced in any race discussion today?
That's what bothers me about it, because it's one of these days when you see the news and you know we're going to talk about it, right? Because it's a sports issue. You have one of the biggest names in the NBA is making this accusation, and so you know you're going to have to talk about it. And I think some shows get fired up, like, hey, we have this opportunity, we can do this. For me, I know coming in, I know what we're getting into because we're two white guys. I just know what we're getting into because we can't relate to that side of an argument. But I am totally with you where you can look at this and separate it out and say, I don't think this has anything to do with the slave master mentality. These two have a feud that goes back almost a decade. Like, they're going back in the newspaper, publicly playing it out. Oakley wanted a job with him, so he's bitter he never got a job with the organization. He's called him a mother bleeper, in the press. I mean, he's done a number of things where Dolan can do what he wants as the owner. Now, if you really want to get into semantics and nuances of it, yeah, does it have some resemblances to a slave-owner relationship? Yeah, if you really try to stretch things in this, and really try to, I don't know, it just seems like way too much of a stretch to me.
If you want to go with the fundamental part of it, of that this is the owner and everyone answers to him, and this is the master on the plane. Like, if I understand those, but then
isn't that how every working relationship works? Like, when I was an NFL player, I had an owner that I had to answer to, and I was cut. And every player, you do feel like an employee. I don't want to use the word slave because I would never feel that way. And maybe some of my coworkers, my fellow NFL players, did feel that way. I definitely felt like a piece of meat. I definitely felt like I was worthless to them when I was cut and left for, scraps, and just said, hey, we don't care. Like, you do feel you're at the whim, but isn't that the same at a lot of workplaces? Like here, I mean, I feel like the same thing. If we don't produce, we're going to get cut. Like, we have to answer to somebody. It's just kind of a hierarchy, a power structure that is in every organization, it seems.
I would agree, but I think people look at it differently, that they're not just employees, even though they are, right? They're famous guys that make a ton of money. We like the players more than the owners, especially more now than ever before. But you can hate Dolan. You can think he's wrong. I don't know who to believe in some of this. I wonder, could Dolan actually have a point on some of his criticisms of Oakley, as irresponsible as they were to share with everybody? I've asked myself that question. But let's say Dolan's completely wrong about everything and was immature and just totally making up stuff to spin it his way, and that's still not going to work. I mean, that's just the way it goes right now. It wouldn't work because people are so anti-Dolan. Is there anything that could just be about Dolan being wrong, not liking Oakley, and that's what it is, and not invoke this analogy that Draymond Green used? Russillo and Kanell, ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. Howard Bryant, ESPN.com senior columnist and from ESPN the magazine, was on with me this morning on SportsCenter, and he got into that relationship of player and owner, employee, and everything we've just been talking about.
This is just an issue of power more than anything else. I think that when you listen to, whenever you hear the word slave master mentality, obviously it's going to be incendiary. Obviously it's going to be something that provokes a reaction. But I think this is where the NBA has been heading and where sports has been heading in terms of power. We're really talking about partnership, or are we talking about owner versus player? And I think we've seen this over and over again when you go back to LeBron James with the Donald Sterling situation, where they were talking about our league and negotiating with Adam Silver as a partnership. And then all of a sudden you have a situation like this where once again the owner reminds you that he's the owner and you're the player. And I think this is where things are heading as players begin to try to assert themselves even more.
I went back and looked this up this morning because I've always been a big fan of the economic history of sports, okay? And baseball was basically 100% white until the color barrier finally was broken. So you go late 40s all the way to the 70s, basically 100% white to about 70% white, even into the 80s. You had a lawsuit against the baseball owners in the 70s for collusion, okay? My position would be, if you're an owner, you're going to try to screw over the players no matter what they look like, because that's just the way business is done. And to say that the NBA players are not partners with ownership right now, they have a pretty good – I'm more pro-player on the economic stuff of this, but that's almost exactly what they have. The CBA is, in fact, in a revenue-sharing partnership, and it's about 50-50. So I don't think owners look at their employees going, well, it's mostly a black league in the NFL, it's mostly a black league in the NBA, so let's take advantage of these guys. Let's treat these guys like they're less than anybody else in the country, when white players in baseball for the decades got treated like crap. You know why? Because they were taken advantage of. I mean, the guys with money, the much money to put together to own one of these franchises, like that guy's going to think he's pretty special, and that guy's going to remind you all the time that he's in charge. I wish all 30 NBA teams were owned by black ownership. I really wish that. Like, I wish all 30 teams had black owners, because you know what would happen then? Nothing different.
Right.
They would still be looking out for the value of their franchise. They'd be looking out for their piece of the pie in the revenue cut. I don't know if Dolan were black, would he have handled the Oakley thing different if he was an incompetent owner who'd run into all this money with the way Dolan has from his father and had been criticized for a decade by Oakley? Would he have handled that differently? Like, I understand the optics. I am not insensitive to that. But I wish we had more black ownership, because my guess would be the relationship between player and owner, and not slave master here, owner of an NBA team, I don't think it'd be any different from what we have right now.
Russillo and Kanell.
Mel Kiper's 2.0 out today, ESPN.com. He has the Browns going with Myles Garrett at number 1, but not Deshaun Watson, number 2 to San Francisco. He has Mitch Trubisky of North Carolina. We had Bill Polian on.
Yeah.
Remember we asked him about Trubisky?
I do.
This was from 2 days ago.
Let's take Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina. He's only played in 13 games.
You can take him. Be my guest.
Right. So you would rather have a Garoppolo than a guy with question marks.
I don't know what Trubisky can do.
Right.
He couldn't beat out the guy who played in front of him, who couldn't make it anywhere in the league. Wasn't even drafted.
What do you say to the people that say Tom Brady didn't beat out, whoever it was at Michigan?
But Brady
Brady had the job. He was beaten out by a phenom.
Right.
And then got the job back. So It's not a correct comparison. Trubisky could not win the job.
Right.
And then if you saw him in the Stanford game where he should have been at his best, you want to tear your hair out.
Yeah.
Does he have physical tools? Yes. Is he ready to play? Absolutely not.
All right. I did notice how you kind of jumped in there too. So maybe you don't like, you're on the narrative is what the thing is.
No, I'm anti that Brady was just this poor senior stuck on the bench the end of his career.
Okay.
And it just,
but
makes for a
to be
better
fair,
story.
so I did a lot of research to this because the Mitch Trubisky narrative, which has been going on by everybody, it's almost become his middle name. Like, Mitch couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, Trubisky. Like, everybody, it's the go-to line for every analyst out there.
Brady had the job. You
got in there with that one quick.
Had to protect Tommy.
So I did it because I was Googling this, just trying to find out who all, has made this statement. And it's almost everybody. You heard Polian just reference it. Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports couldn't beat out Marquise Williams. CBS Sports, Rob Rang, disconcerting. He couldn't win the job until his third year in. Bucky Brooks from NFL, great dude, does great stuff. I worry about a one-year wonder in that he couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, in his first 3 years. Then I'll leave this one anonymous. Kind of like Jamarcus Russell couldn't beat out Matt Flynn. How'd that work out? Like, it's getting really
Did
bad.
anyone say that, by the way, when Jamarcus was about to be drafted?
No.
I've never heard that one.
No one said it. So I went
back. By the way, Mayock
researched.
said it.
Mayock said it as well. I mean, it's everybody's go-to line on Mitch Trubisky, which is fine. It is a fact about his career, but I don't necessarily see it as this awful, horrendous thing that you have to have, just crushing you, and it's dragging him down in the draft like he's awful. First of all, Marquise Williams was a really good college quarterback. We all agree on that?
He was really good. It's okay. And sometimes
we treat him like he's a piece of trash, like some, garbage. He was a good quarterback.
How many years younger was Trubisky too than
he was?
Williams?
A few. So he was so here's what bothers me the most about it. What do we do when a guy transfers? If he can't win the job, he's a quitter. The guy's a quitter.
Well, you did do that to Barnett.
Absolutely. I do it too. That's why I'm actually trying to defend somebody who stuck through it, who was like, hey, I'm going to wait my turn. I'm not going to quit on my teammates. I'm going to wait my opportunity, and when I get it, I'm going to make the most of it. So Tom Brady started his junior year, then his senior year, after playing an entire year, had to split reps the first 5 games of his senior year with Henson to see where he was. So he didn't exactly slam dunk win that job. That's just one of them. Your boy Joe Flacco couldn't beat out Tyler Palko at Pitt. What did he do? He transferred. Don't love it.
Quitter.
Aaron Rodgers couldn't beat out Reggie Robertson at Cal in his first couple years. Then he finally got his start. These are the ones that get debatable as I was digging through. Kurt Warner, of course, legendary about all the jobs he couldn't win. Like, he couldn't get a
against
gig.
Favre, Brunell, and Ty Detmer?
No, I'm talking about just to get
everywhere.
to the NFL. Yeah, everywhere. Okay. Everywhere in his career.
I just want to make sure we cut you off when you start doing the cowherd thing where you're adding things.
So, like,
if
I went Cam Newton couldn't beat out Tim Tebow, is that crossing the line?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. So, Ryan Tannehill, okay, because he's a similar case study. Couldn't beat out Gerard Johnson at Texas A&M. Had to play receiver. Had to split time with him. Finally got to play one full year. Didn't play much. That was a knock on him. But my question to you, and Cerruti kind of was alluding to this in our pre-show meeting, like he was 8th overall pick. He's been pretty good. I think there's still a ton unknown. But if you're Mitch Trubisky's like a similar to Ryan Tannehill, wouldn't you say, yeah, he's worth a top 10 pick?
Tannehill's a tougher sell for me, but if you just kind of open it up to, that you're going to have a guy that physically can play the position, I think Tannehill still physically is maybe more impressive than some of the numbers. What are we talking, a year and a half of numbers where you go, wow, that's really good, and you just wish it was more consistent? That's still probably worth or merit a top 10 pick, especially when you're a fan base or just a front office that goes, we've had to figure out the answer to this question, what are we doing a quarterback, for a bunch of years in a row. But the bigger point is what? In that everybody's somebody said it the first time, and now everybody's just repeating it over and over again, as if Mitch Trubisky, who, by the way, was 2 years younger than Williams, is the only guy that didn't start immediately as an NFL prospect.
Right, and it drives me nuts because I think people are using it to pepper him. If you want to criticize him for saying, hey, it was only 13 games, well, I think that's a totally fair assumption. You can make that all day long, and you can accuse that. I wish he would have stayed, but the NFL Advisory Board gave him a first-round pick. Great. So good for him. Good for taking the payday to come out. I just don't want it to be something where people get lazy and everybody's go-to is, well, couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, because it's not that big a deal. Let's take Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina. He's only played in 13 games.
You can take him. Be my guest.
Right. That's the weakest voice I think I've ever heard myself go with.
No, you sound worse here. But Brady
Brady had the job. You
cut in there on me.
Hey, baseball fans, this is Buster Olney. Mark your calendars because the daily edition of the Baseball Tonight podcast returns on Tuesday, February 21st. Make sure you subscribe to the show now in the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
The biggest star in all of New Orleans this weekend, and I am jealous because she'll be involved in a game that I'm apparently no longer allowed to be in.
Take out the maybe. She will be.
That's right. Jamel Hill joins us now on the show. Pennzoil Performance Line. Choose Shelby Power Nitro plus premium gasoline for the best total engine protection that you can get. She's hosting and coaching in the Celebrity All-Star Game. So, Jamel, how's New Orleans?
It's like you remembered it. A lot of fun. Obviously I just been here in a couple of hours, but, with New Orleans, everything is just right out there in the open. And I just want to say, because you said that about the game you're no longer allowed in, I don't know the particulars. I'm just a first-year coach, but I want people to understand I did not pick my team, okay?
I know, right?
Don't you get a coach's pick, though, for Russillo? Couldn't you get him last minute, like coach's pick?
Look, if I could have, I would tell you this. I swear on everything I love, and when black people swear on everything they love, it means something, is that if Russillo were actually here, I swear I would do an in-game trade. I'm not even playing.
Well, we're looking at flights still, so we'll see what's going on.
Okay.
All right, let's.
If you make it here by tomorrow, I got you.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. You and I talked a bit off the air, and we opened with the Draymond Green comments about James Dolan, the Charles Oakley situation. So when you hear Draymond make the analogy that this is kind of the slave-master mentality and how Dolan was acting towards Oakley, what's your reaction when you hear that?
Well, my immediate reaction is I like to read the full context of what people said, because if you recall, that terminology was thrown around a lot when Dan Gilbert, with his Comics fans letter response to LeBron leaving. And I thought I kind of understood where that one was going. This one, to me, is a lot different. And I just think in general that you have to be really careful about how you throw that term around, given the nature and the seriousness and the incredible generational impact that slavery had on us as a nation. So you have to be really careful, because honestly, how often do we hear any kind of analogies to concentration camps or anything dealing with the Holocaust? We don't. And I think there's, with very good reason, it's because you want to make sure that you keep that within the reverence it deserves. So for me, it was a little problematic, given that, James Dolan obviously has relationships with former players who are black, but he has obviously a very negative relationship to this former player. So the irritation for me is not necessarily in what Draymond Green said. The irritation for me now going forward is going to be all these people who pretend to know everything about slavery. That's going to be the irritation, because now you're going to have all the outraged police of people putting on for like, yeah, you can never say this, and comparing something to slavery. And it's like, okay, I don't need to fake care. What he said to me was just off the mark, and we can just leave it at that.
Jamel, when I heard the comments at first, I was bummed, because I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I know people are going to come out with hot takes. They're going to come out with their sides of the argument. And it's such a meaningful discussion that needs to be had by our country when you talk about race, that when it is thrown around in situations like this, where I don't think it pertains to this situation, that I think it's detrimental to the bigger discussion. Do you agree with that?
It is detrimental, but, you know, the problem I struggle with that, with Danny, is it detrimental because we need to be smarter, or is it detrimental because you have people throwing around things? Like, I think we just live in a culture, period, where when certain people say certain things, that it automatically becomes news, and I don't know if that's appropriate necessarily. Like, I realize this is Draymond Green, and he's playing on the Warriors, you know, best team in the NBA, and he's got a high-profile position. So anything he says is going to be very newsworthy. But we also have to remember, like, this dude is in his 20s, and I'm not trying to excuse anything that he says based off his age, because I think, you know, that's obviously an easy out for somebody. But I'm also trying to get people to be a little bit elevated in your thinking, in the sense that, like, every time somebody invokes either slave or slave mentality, or even, you know, I saw some comments before I got on air with you guys about Charles Oakley comparing Donald Sterling to James Dolan. Like, look, I felt like Oakley, I was on his side of this thing, but you can't make that comparison. Like, we got to keep this legitimate and real, and make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to pomegranates.
Jamel, one of the things that I think is really important to remember through all this, though, is luckily we have more information about what this relationship is about. But is there ever a part of you, when you just see the optics of Oakley on the ground surrounded by white security guards, that you can't help but think that race is part of this, when we just look at that part, when it's almost like the optics of it may be more difficult to deal with, but when we're armed with all the information, we understand where the conflict is with these two people in particular?
I understand what the conflict is, but I still don't think it should ever get to that, because, look, there are former players that go back to arenas all the time. There are former players that, frankly, criticize their old organization. But most owners are smart enough to know that even if this former player is saying something that may be something I don't like, but, like, you know how to pick your battles. You can be more mature about it. And I thought the optic, to your point, of Oakley being surrounded by these, you know, white security officials, given where we are at a time in our country with, you know, the treatment of African Americans by the police and by authority figures, like, that's a bad optic. Like, it should never get to that. It should never get to that. And so I do put that on James Dolan, because regardless of your issues with Oakley, like, you can't ever let that visual be something that's put out there, because it's just way too triggering for a lot of people, myself included. So, you know, I'll just say this, is that while I do think, you know, we have to be certainly mindful, careful, and thoughtful about how we bring race into any conversation, you know, we also have to understand sometimes when we're serving people racial porn, as I like to call it, and that was an image of racial pornography.
Let me finish, and that's a great analogy there. Jamel Hill, the co-anchor of the 6 o'clock Sports Center, the 6 here on ESPN. If the NBA, if the 30 teams, instead of one black owner, if it was 20 black owners, how different do you think the league would be with its relationships with its players?
Well, generally speaking, though, here's the crazy part of where the NBA, I think, has been able to set itself apart. And why right now, I think you can make the very fair argument that Adam Silver is the best commissioner in all of the major pro sports.
Agreed.
The thing is, even though you don't have a majority black ownership, you have an ad hoc majority black ownership, in the sense that, as you know, Ryan, it's a players' league. One player can completely tank or uplift an entire franchise by himself. We saw that with LeBron. We see it with numerous superstars all the time. So even though they may not necessarily be owners, there is a level of power that players have in this league that is very unique. And that's why Adam Silver and that's why Michael Jordan jumped into this, because I think if this happens in the NFL, Roger Goodell probably wouldn't jump in. He probably wouldn't care, right? Because it wouldn't be that bad of an optic for their league necessarily, given what the power structure is. But in this league, you have to jump in if you're Adam Silver. And so even though this is something that was awful and regrettable that happened, I do think it's a very unique New York Knicks James Dolan situation. Like, I can't think of it as a single ownership where even some of the worst that we have, maybe only Donald Sterling, and he's not in the league anymore. And even with him, the worst we saw was him going off on Baron Davis and calling him all kind of names courtside. But, like, I can never imagine another ownership that would be okay with one of their former players being drug out of an arena. And I think that speaks to what the power dynamic is in the NBA.
Jamel, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We do really appreciate it. Have some fun down in New Orleans. You know you're going to find a way to do that, and enjoy the celebrity game, all right?
All right, we'll do. Thanks, Ryan.
Russillo and Kanell.
How about that Walton Vitale experience, huh? I thought Pash might retire at halftime.
No, sometimes I feel kind of bad for Pash. A lot of times I feel bad for Pash because he's like just kind of sit back and just let him go, but then he's got to try to rein things back a little bit. And good luck with that crew.
For those that may not know what we're talking about, last night the Cavs game with the Pacers, it was part of the crossover thing that we do. And I think it's fun. I mean, it gets people talking. There's reaction. Yeah. I mean, that's really the goal of all of this stuff. And I was talking to one of my managers on the walk in, and he goes, think about the social media impact of Walton Vitale doing a game. It doesn't even matter. Like, but I'm sitting there going, okay. And when Walton is so out there that Vitale sounds like Vitale's being interrupted, and to hear someone like someone's being rude to Dick Vitale because they're talking over him too much, and Vitale sounds like the reasonable one.
Yeah.
And like Vitale's trying to tighten it up and be more professional. Like that's, and it's not a knock. Like, Dick is emotion. It's emphatic, this or that and all. Like he's an entertainer as he does the games. And he almost sounded like the straight guy to Bill Walton's routine.
Yes. I'm with you. The crossover, huge success. So much so, we're close to an announcement. Like, we're close. Because I was texting furiously some of our higher-ups because there's a crossover in the works.
For you?
So I threw out the idea just to let it. It's been received pretty well. So Adnan Verk, Joey Galloway, and myself, we're together all day Saturdays in studio. We're going to swap out with McDonough and Gruden on Monday Night Football, and they can do the studio halftime on Saturday for college football. The football crossover. I think it's a slam dunk home run. What do you think?
I wish I could make money on that not happening.
It got some good feedback on the text.
Who?
I think some of them were mostly sarcastic, though.
That's my guy. I think I was hoping you were looking for me. I still want to do the Stugotz for you trade. But I
told you, Lebitard won't let it happen.
Okay, so
I even texted him yesterday.
Why not me for Stugotz then? Because I was trying to be nice because that's your home area, the home state, not that far from Fort Lauderdale.
Because Dan will never come here.
Okay, so send me down for Stu.
That's not fair. I don't want that.
So you wouldn't.
Down.
I was willing to just take a knee on that whole thing. Like I knew I would. Like it'd be nice for you to take the family home for a week.
Yeah.
Do that whole thing. I'll do the show with Stu.
Right.
I don't have to leave. But you know what? That's never going to happen because of you and Lebitard.
Right.
Lebitard and I get along. So why can't you just do that for me? Why can't you let me go down there for a week and have you and Stu can nerd it out up here?
What if do you think there's any, I don't even know why it got so bad with me and Lebitard. Do you think there's a better chance of reconciliation between Dolan and Oakley or me and Lebitard?
The thing is more people care about one than the other.
Yes.
I'll give Marcus Spears all the credit in the world on this one. And actually it wasn't Marcus Spears, it's Mark Spears. And one of our basketball guys, over the undefeated, I was messing him up with our LSU dude. But he goes, the Dolan act to then, after the Oakley thing, to sit next to Latrell and Larry Johnson, like that Seinfeld episode where Costanza's like, hey, I do have black friends.
Yes.
Like he starts bringing the custodian around.
Yes.
Like that was
Awful.
such a great call by Spears on that one. Russillo and Kanell, it's ESPN Radio. It's presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of $500. Call or click today to find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. You have a problem with mock drafts, not specific to Mel, not specific to McShay, but just in general.
Well, I'm becoming a skeptic.
Used to love them, too.
And I love those dudes. I still do. Like, I love watching.
Would you ever say you hated a dude on the air?
Yeah, totally.
Who?
I don't know. I have to hate one first. So it goes.
That was well done by you.
So I love these dudes, love what they do. I'll always tune in to watch what they're saying. I'll tune in and get every mock draft that comes out. But I'm worrying if the showmanship is taking over the substance.
Okay, what's that mean?
So our boy McShay.
Yeah.
Was one of our favorite hours of the week we had Wednesday.
McShay's about
right?
to get it right
I
now.
thought it was going to be Kuiper, and then I started digging in, and I was like, uh-oh, wait a second. I've noticed more discrepancy in McShay's than Kuiper's. So in his mock 1.0.
And what's the date on 1.0? Because I just want
December 13th.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that when
Todd
McShay puts that one out
sure.
right after the draft, a year ahead of time.
Right. This is different, though. This is 1.0. So this is like the release December 13th. So it's after college football season is done. He had Deshaun Watson not getting drafted in the first round. Was not in the mock 1.0. He had Mitch Trubisky going late in the first round in his 1.0. Then, a month later, February 8th, out comes a new mock draft, and the drama builds, and there's a big segment on SportsCenter, huge tease, because there's a huge mover. Deshaun Watson, out of nowhere, goes to number 2 with the 49ers.
So what are you saying?
I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying, but
something.
I'm looking at it. But did the championship game change that much? Like, was it that game? Was there intel? Was there more film study? Which all could be the case, all of it. Like, and it probably is the case. But I think a lot of fans look at it and they think it's trash. I think a lot of NFL executives, GMs, scouts look at it and they think it's trash. I don't think they're trash at all because I know the work these dudes put in. Like, I know McShay studies more film than probably any of
Part
our
of it is
here.
him studying and where he is in the timeline. He'll tell you by the end of March he's more prepared for it than he would be before.
Right.
But I think if you're looking at the
Do
mock
you
drafts,
ever think that there's a mock that comes out, like the 3.0, let's say it comes out, and it's looking kind of similar, and one of them are like, man, we need to do something to shake it up a little bit.
Yes.
So you do.
Yeah, I think.
And I'm okay with that. Like, I get it. Like,
Right, but the problem is the tease is what? We have a massive shakeup here.
Right.
I'm more of the NBA draft guy, right? Everybody
Sure.
knows that. I've covered it now for years. I've done it here for radio for the last, 4 or so. But when I talk to general managers, and there's one in particular, and he's a really good GM, and he is convinced. He says it to me every year. He goes, if there were no mock drafts, and they're always going to be, it's fun, okay? It's fun.
Yeah,
I think
great.
it's one of those things where can't we just have fun with it, but understand it doesn't really mean anything,
Right.
right? Like,
Well,
it's like why
trust
don't
me, players that are coming out get worried about him. Like, they hate him.
Okay. GMs hate him because they believe, other than the top guys, at least in the NBA, but other than the top handful of names that are just talent-wise the guys that deserve to be there, they feel like the draft would play out entirely differently. But the problem is that all the fans, everyone in the media, including not in the media, but you factor in ownership is sitting around and printing out Chad Ford's latest thing, they're going, it starts to influence you. So if you were the GM and you want to take a guy at 15 that's only going 25 or later in the mocks, like some GMs don't care, but I think other GMs are like, if it's close between my guy that I want and the guy that's been projected to go a lot higher, I'll just go with the guy that was a lot higher, so that way if I'm wrong, at least I'm wrong with everybody else, as opposed to where if I'm wrong, where you go, oh, I can't believe you took that guy anyway. He was a borderline first-rounder. I believe that happens.
I think in football, I don't think you could find a scout, GM, anyone on the record or off the record that would say, I pay attention to those. I think their ego is too big. Like, they would refuse to admit that they gave credence to him.
Yeah, this GM's basically telling me it does.
I know, which I can't believe
Right.
that happens. I think it'd be really hard-pressed to find one in the NFL.
So you need that now, before now in the NFL draft, you need to keep track of all of this stuff.
All right. And
All right.
apologize to McShay.
No, you don't need to apologize.
All right.
If you think McShay's terrible at his job, you have the forum all 3 hours to do that. So there you go.
Definitely not what I said. Love McShay.
Is it?
Hey, basketball fans, I'm George Sedano on the latest NBA Lockdown podcast. The full cast today. Amin Al-Hassan, Cassidy Hubbard, Kevin Pelton, and I talked to Pablo Torre about his LeBron piece, Adam Schefter about his new role as an NBA sideline reporter, and Draymond's comments.
The winner of the Celebrity Apprentice, he's a guy that's been a friend to us as just a social media dude, and we're fired up because when Matt Eisman hit me up with, I can't believe I'm going to be on The Apprentice, I was like, no way, which celebrities are going to be on it, which was the layup joke of layup jokes. I then felt so bad about it because I was like, what are you going to do, write on it or something? And here he is, he wins, and he joins us now. What's up, man?
Hey, I got to say, technically speaking, between McConaughey, Dumel, and me, you guys have like two and a quarter celebrities listening to you now.
That's a good call.
That is a pretty good call.
It was a thrill for me to get to go out there and now come back and take the celebratory lap with you guys.
It was awesome to see because I saw some of the finale, and you were talking about how you were the dark horse and no one gave you a chance to win, and you even kind of made light of that.
Was that out of the Belichick book right there?
Yeah.
Nobody believes in me. This is poster board material. As I was listening to it, I was like, God, do I sound a little melodramatic? I mean, it is what I believed. I definitely was the least famous person going into this, and so I know where I am on the celebrity hierarchy. So it was fun just kind of, taking it one game at a time, grinding it out, just finally being there in the finals.
Did it ever get awkward at any point? Like when one of those celebrities would be like, who are you? What do you do?
So at the beginning, Snooki heard there was a doctor on the show. I used to be an MD, and she heard there was a doctor, and she's walking around and she goes, is it Vince Neil? She said it's Vince Neil because he's the one they call Dr. Feelgood. And I'm like, this is the level of stars I'm going up against here. There was a moment where I'm having to be the project manager. Boy George is throwing a tantrum, and then Vince Neil storms out, and then he and John Lovitz are in a shouting match, and I'm in the middle of all of this. Just going, and part of me was just like, this is awesome. This is really a great story I'm going to have to tell. So emotionally, I tried not to get too invested in it. It's just like when Boogie Cousins throws a tantrum, you're like, yeah, okay, just get your 30 points, Vince Neil. Just raise money, sing a song, and just don't get me fired.
Matt Eisman, who joins us, and his team, Matt, raised over $500,000 for the Arthritis Foundation, which, we're not trying to make this serious or now, but that's a huge number. But would you sit there and say, I'm the least famous, which our audience probably agrees with right now, is there a chance Vince Neil didn't go level 10 Vince Neil on this? Is there a chance that some of these dudes are like, look, at the end of the day, I'm still the lead singer of Motley Crue, and you hosted Sports Soup?
No, there's no chance. Vince Neil gave me his best, and I still beat him.
Yes.
And that's what I'm going to the grave with. Yeah, of course. Of course, at a certain point, Vince Neil, he's showing me a $250,000 watch around his wrist that's a different one every day. So how invested is he in this? Maybe not as much as me. I don't know that anyone had as much to gain from it. Not only from, look, this can boost my career, maybe I get a spot on Russillo and Kanell, but also for my charity. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so the Arthritis Foundation is near and dear to me. And because I won all in on the season, it actually ended up being $978,000. So almost $1 million for charity than I ever thought I could do. So, it was great. I get to fanboy out with Schwarzenegger. I got to meet Tyra Banks, and hopefully we got to do some good.
So Russillo's still jealous about the Vince Neil watch comment because he's a huge watch guy. He's mad he can't sport one of those every day. So we were just looking at this because we know who you are, what you've done recently, some of the stuff you've done with comedy and on TV, but you're a doctor. You played baseball. How did you get to this point?
I was like a less athletic, more intellectual Danny Kanell. I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school. And it was actually, I got into Stanford, but they're like, yeah, you're really going to help our GPA. So I go to Princeton, and then ended up going to Columbia, got my MD. And
wait a minute. Time out. You get into Stanford to play football or baseball? Because you played
baseball.
You played baseball at Princeton, right?
Yeah. And, I was there. they'd just gone back-to-back national champions. So Messina, I think he was just graduating or was a junior on the team. And, again, I knew if I'm going there, I'm maybe seeing some mop-up duty my senior year. So I ended up going to Princeton where I got to play, and we made it. We got to the NCAA tournament one year, but it's the baseball was not the featured element of Princeton. So ended up at med school in New York, and then got my MD, realized my heart wasn't in it, and decided to take a year off, try something different. I moved out to LA, started doing stand-up comedy, and never went back.
That's incredible. That's an incredible story. It's unbelievable.
You're good at a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, I like the subtle diss, too. Less athletic, more intellectual.
On paper, Russillo, I'm awesome, but as my girlfriend points out in person, not so much. But it was fun. For me, Apprentice was great because, again, I've done comedy and hosting stuff, but it was nice to also be able to talk about my disease and the Arthritis Foundation and raise a lot of money. And it was cool. Like, we got to go to the Clippers and meet Steve Ballmer. And had to hype up the crowd, and that is death. In a first quarter of a Tuesday night NBA game, the crowd doesn't want to hear from you. But Ballmer's there. We're running around on the court giving away T-shirts with Ricky Williams and Layla Ali, and it was just some really cool once in a lifetime moments that we got to experience.
What was the hottest friendship you developed to the show?
Boy George. Actually, we ended up being opponents in the finale, and I remember in junior high school seeing Boy George. This is the first man I'd ever seen wearing makeup when it wasn't common, and just thinking my God, this person is from a different planet. And then within a couple of days, you're just sitting down and he's just an ordinary dude from London, and he was a great guy, a creative guy, and for all he's been through, for as iconic he is, he's a really nice guy. We really got along well. Hasn't returned my calls since the show ended, but I still think we're friends.
All right, give us the best story then, Matt. We're talking to Matt Eisman, the winner of Celebrity Apprentice. What's the moment where you're like, this is weird? Give me your best story from the whole season.
So you'll appreciate this, right? Because I know you're a huge Harry Potter fan. But we did a task around the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and I ended up winning it. And so I'm getting interviewed after the task in the war room where Schwarzenegger was. And I'm walking on there, and I'm given the typical kind of Belichick post-game presser where, you know what? I was just lucky. I felt great that this was a task, and it was really lucky. And then I hear this booming voice go, "That's bull crap. You won because you're talented." And Schwarzenegger throws me a stogie. He goes, "Now smoke this, because tomorrow I'm going to fire your ass." And he walked out, and I was like, "Tell me you got that on camera." It was my dream to have Schwarzenegger yelling at me like I was one of his soldiers going into a movie. And then Tyra Banks called me a fine-ass man. So
that's
at
good.
this point, my life is complete.
Has Trump tweeted at you yet?
Well, so in the finale, when they showed me winning, as I'm celebrating, it comes up executive producer Donald J. Trump right under my face. So I'm thinking he watched the episode, and the day after, I got a call from a 202, a D.C. area code. And for a second, I'm like, no. And it turns out it was my brother calling. But I thought for a second Trump was going to call. So, no, not yet.
You're very close to your brother, huh? You don't even have his number in your phone?
Honestly, after this, I've got a few more days of quote-unquote celebrity, and then I'm back to the host of a reality show. So I'm enjoying this.
Awesome, man.
Hey, seriously, though, you have been really cool to us. You've always shot us notes on Twitter, and I just want to let you know that Sports Soup has not tweeted since 2010, May. So if you want to go back.
It lives on in our hearts, man.
That's true. There's some good zingers here from 7 years ago.
Well, I will say I've listened to your show since before you even had your name on it, Russillo, back when it was you and the Bald Man. And you guys continue to get better. And, Rosenberg would have been great, but I'm glad you went with Kanell. I think
man.
I think you guys are fantastic. I listen every day. So
awesome.
It's a thrill to get to call in.
Thanks, buddy. Congrats.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Russillo and Kanell, the podcast.
888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Peter Rosenberg, live in New York City, on his way to New Orleans. Again, he'll be in the celebrity basketball game tomorrow night, 7 Eastern on ESPN. I'm still looking at flights, maybe a last-minute chance I'd make it there at midnight tomorrow. And I do appreciate Peter acknowledging how many parties I've gotten into him last couple. I may be bugging you if I make it down there tomorrow night, but I wouldn't be there until very, very late.
Why so late, though? Why couldn't you get there for the game?
because I'm flying out of Connecticut. I didn't take the day off. I thought I was going to be going for work. We're not going for work. And then I thought I was doing something else, kind of like a little side hustle. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And you know what? Look, I'm a last-minute guy. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
You're a crazy man. Listen, you're a single guy. These are the things you're afforded.
Right. If I want to go to New Orleans tomorrow by myself, I can
Done.
do it. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776.
I'm ready.
Jimmy in Texas.
Yeah, I got a question. My wife is wanting me to take a lie detector test. She wants to, I don't know, she's having second thoughts about being married to me. I still want to make it work, but I believe that after the test and everything, she's still going to be wanting to leave. So what do I need to do?
Heavy.
Wait, Ryan, sorry, help me real quick. He doesn't think his wife wants to be married to him, but what did he throw in there?
He wants to make it work, but he's afraid she's just going to leave. Did I get that? Pretty much it, right?
That's what I okay.
Jimmy, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I want to make it work, but I feel like regardless of what comes out of everything, she's going to leave anyway. So,
well, how long have you been together?
6 years.
And what makes you think she wants to leave? Like she just doesn't seem happy? Like she repeatedly doesn't seem happy?
Yeah.
Well, listen, that's not a good spot to be in. I mean, you got to ask yourself about what you guys share, really. And Ryan, I'm glad you gave me this one because on Hot 97, I am known as the relationship guru. How much good is there? Like if your relationship is filled with an amazing history, then maybe you're just going through a rough patch. If it's always kind of been bad, then maybe it really is the end and it's time to set up that Tinder account.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jimmy. It doesn't sound like there's trips to Niagara Falls here wearing the same sweatshirt saying, I'm with stupid, and like it just, I don't know. That was a bummer. Let's go to Alex in Iowa.
Yeah.
Sorry,
hey guys,
Jimmy.
Thanks. Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I watched La La Land with my wife on Valentine's Day, and Emma Stone was great. And
liberal media.
Ryan Gosling is, obviously the best, but I was wondering if it's okay to say out in public that I didn't like the movie, or if I have to just go by popular and just say it was great.
Wait, you did like it or you didn't like it? I thought you said you thought it was great.
I didn't like it. I thought Emma Stone's good and Ryan Gosling was really good.
Oh, but you thought it was bad?
Yeah,
listen,
was bad.
I support you. I want you to tell everyone you didn't like La La Land. I refuse to even see La La Land. I think that it is a disgrace that Hollywood is like, oh my God, we're sorry we've been so white. We're sorry. We're going to nominate Moonlight this year, and everyone's going to think we're progressive, but we're really going to give all the nomination and all the praise to literally the whitest, most Hollywoody movie about Hollywood of all time. I'm not even seeing La La Land on principle, and I support you.
Yeah, and by the way, the call out of the fake nominations, huh?
Yeah, I'm offended. I don't like it.
All right.
I am.
Noted. Corey in Cleveland, you're on with Peter Rosenberg.
Hey, Peter. So it's supposed to be really nice this weekend. Hoping to play some golf, but the problem is my wife's getting her wisdom teeth out. Got a big trip going down to Scottsdale. A lot of gambling going to be going on. Do I get my game in shape or do I stay home with the wife?
When is she getting the teeth pulled?
Tomorrow at 12:45.
Tomorrow at 12:45. Here's what I do. I get a late tea time because I prefer a late tea time anyway. Well, you have one of two options. You could go the other direction and just go super early tea time, like 6:30. That's not really my style, though. So I would be more likely to get the 3 p.m. tea time, go take her to get the surgery done, bring her home afterwards, make sure she's all set, and then have like her mom or a friend there to hold it down for a few hours while we're gone.
All right. There's Peter. People are going to be surprised here. That's bad advice. He just said next weekend he's going away for a big boys' weekend in Scottsdale. Okay,
that's a really good point.
So he's already gone next week. So like the fact that I figured out the play in this one isn't a good sign. Like he has to stay all day with her Friday and hold her hand and tell her she doesn't look like a squirrel. Right. And the thing is you know how golf is. There's a good chance you're going to be terrible next weekend anyway. I mean, unless you're just a scratch golfer, like it doesn't matter. Like you're going to hit it out of the bunker a little bit better next weekend because you put the extra time in.
By the way, You're 100% right. And I forgot tomorrow's Friday and not Saturday. He should, by the way, worst case, play Sunday. Ryan's probably right. Skip this weekend and play next weekend. You're not gearing up. You're not gearing up for the Masters. It doesn't matter how you play next week.
Last one is Cameron in Texas.
Hey, fellas. Peter, first off, I hope you get buckets this weekend.
Thank you.
Second off, so I've been in an outside sales job for a technology company the last 2.5 years, but the last 6 months, my boss has really kind of gone into this micromanaging role. There's me and 5 other guys who are direct reports to him. At what point do you say something to your boss about, the way he's kind of managing, and like really harping down on all the little things, or do you not say something? And if you do, how do you go about it?
How long have you been at the job?
Almost 2.5 years.
How good are you at the job? Like, do you know for a fact your boss thinks you're awesome?
I'm in the top quarter of sales representatives across the country.
Could you get another job if you lost this job?
I could, yes, but you never know in today's job market. But yes, I would imagine that I could easily.
If you feel confident you could get another job, even if it was hard, but you know you could, then I think it's not a bad idea if you have a good rapport with him to just be like, hey, when you get a minute, not when he says something, maybe at a random time, or maybe it is after he says something a bit aggressive. Wait a little bit, then follow up with him and say, hey, I just want to talk to you. Listen, I know what we're trying to do and blah, 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 but I don't operate well like this. Like, this just isn't how I get things done. I totally get it if that's your style, but you're not going to get the most out of me that way. And he'll either tell you to screw himself or he'll say he respects it. Ryan?
Yeah, these were really serious. I mean, the first one...
I got really serious ones. Let's be honest. This was like you were asking me for legitimate life advice, and I do nothing but talk about sports and wrestling all day. Why would anyone ask me anything?
Hey, I'm pumped for you. It's so much fun. In a moment when you get, they announce your name and you come out and you're in your gear and your wife is going to be there, it's a cool weekend. So steal me something, and who knows? I'll shoot you a text last minute if I'm on my way, all right?
Yeah, if you do come, hit me. And either way, if you come, you better watch at the airport. And if not, you better watch at home. I want a full review.
All right, you're the man. Peter Rosenberg. See you, bud.
Peace, guys.
The NBA All-Star Game this Sunday.
Here's Curry behind the back. Half-court heave on its way. And he hits it!
Coverage begins Sunday at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.